until he may or may not get impeached. I want him gone right now.
On that video, are you threatening him?
No.
You say that you think that he should be brought to an end.
I said he deserves to stand trial to the American people. Some paraphrase, I guess. But
I think you use the word end.
That's what I mean by end. I mean, by end, I don't mean like a civil war, if that is the imagery that you're trying to imagine.
Lou says he built this cross after carrying wooden slats from his near West Side apartment to Grant Park last Tuesday afternoon. He showed the red ball cap that he put on the top beam and used lighter fluid and toilet paper to get it all going.
I put a red hat to signify the MAGA hat, the Make America Great Again hat. So that was... Yeah, that's what I tied on top.
But that's not visible in the one video that was taken by a motorist.
Lou says he was protesting what he calls MAGA Christian nationalist supporters and the Trump administration ruling class.
We're just scamming out of money, right? And I think that's a great reflection of how this country works right now. I don't want to wait until he may or may not get...
Dude. That cost about $5,000. $50. Good morning. Wake up, America. Rise in freedom. It's Wednesday, June the 17th. We're 17 days out from this country's 250th birthday. The flag is running high. The coffee is hot. And the people who run this country are, of course, still lying to you about everything that matters. You turned on the TV this morning expecting a quiet news day on the road to independence. Good luck. The biggest story of the morning hit the front page of the New York Times and blew the lid off one of the most powerful nonprofits in America. A federal grand jury has indicted the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Southern Poverty Law Center is indicted. Yes. Exactly. How much did the SPLC pay that kid? Exactly. This is the organization that spent 40 years telling everybody who counts as a Nazi which pastor belongs on a hate map, and which of your neighbors needs to be canceled by the end of the week. Well, the U.S. government is now alleging that the people who built their empire selling themselves to you as Nazi hunters were quietly on the other side of the ledger, cutting a Nazi a paycheck to stay Nazis. So the people who tell the banks who to debank, who tell your congressman who to condemn, and who tell the tech platforms who to silence, now stand accused of funding the exact same monsters they always warned you about. And not only were they funding that, they were doing a lot more to the Nazis as well. So apparently they used 3 shell companies and spent $3 million, and a couple living under one roof whose joint bank account is going to tell you a story you're not going to believe. So we're going to put the whole thing in the context of 40 years of manufactured hoaxes that train the American press to believe this stuff without asking a single honest question of what's going on. So we've got that story this morning. If you live in California, or if you saw Arnold Schwarzenegger yesterday and did a double take when the Terminator himself went after Gavin Newsom, then yes, you saw this right. Arnold looked into a camera and said out loud what every working family in California has known for years. Good morning. Who is your daddy and what does he do? Something like that. Sacramento has been running a scam at the gas pump, and the plumbers and the roofers and the nurses of his old state that he was governor of are all picking up the tab. The national average for gas is $4 a gallon. California, $6 a gallon. And Adam Smith predicted this racket exactly in a book that was published in the same year Jefferson signed the Declaration of Independence. Speaking of which, at the top of the 8 o'clock hour, we are joined by the one and only Judge Andrew Napolitano. He's got a new column every American ought to read before the fireworks go off on the 4th. Question on the judge's desk. It's the same question the founders would ask if they could see what we have built in their absence. Is this a republic, or is this an empire? 750 military bases scattered across 80 countries. The Federal Reserve devalues your property while you sleep, and an executive branch that treats Congress like a houseplant. The judge is bringing the receipts, and then the back half of the show today, we've got something really special. Actually, we've got a couple of really nice special things for you today. We're going to head to the studio floor for a simulcast with our friend Chris Salcedo, conservative talk radio legend, Blaze TV fixture, and a guy who has looked at the liberty movement from the outside for the decades, and looking in, and he's like, what's wrong with these children? The Libertarian Party is hemorrhaging ballot access in state after state. The biggest names in liberty are walking out the door. What was the lady who ran for president 2 cycles ago was talking about running again? And the old Reagan fusionist deal between conservatives and libertarians is hanging by a thread. So is there still room inside the conservative coalition for a serious liberty wing in 2026, or is that marriage over? Chris is going to tell us what he thinks, and we are going to be simulcasting live on our show and his show, so keep an eye out for that at 8:30 a.m. We're going to do something a little special, and it could just blow up in our faces and become a big technical screwball situation, which would be really embarrassing, and then you get to watch it out loud, which would be as entertaining for you. So if it messes up, then that'll be really entertaining. So make sure you stick around for 8:30 a.m. where we're going to do a simulcast with Chris Salcedo on his show. We'll be live on his show. We'll be live on our show. And we've got lots of other announcements as well today. A couple of other announcements real quick, some house cleaning stuff. I'm going to be on Real Talk Radio today, filling in as a guest host alongside Heather Jacobson. She is a Missouri TikTok star who is speaking out about data centers and about the income tax abolishing. So if you're interested, then at 11 a.m. Central Time today, I'm going to be co-hosting Heather Jacobson's show with her today at 11 a.m. Central. So keep an eye out for news on that on our X channel. Also, if you guys are already subscribers to the coffee program that we have over at forlibertyshop.com, then keep an eye in the mail whenever you get your next delivery, because we have got some beautiful redesigns. It's the same great coffee, but we've got some beautiful redesigns of all of our packages. Franklin's Electric Elixir. We wanted to standardize everything and make everything look like it's all in the same universe. And it's absolutely beautiful. Stephanie did a phenomenal job here. So if you haven't stocked up on Founding Flavors coffee, now is the great time to do that, because if you do, not only you're going to get all the beautiful redesigns, but you're going to also help to unlock the bonus content on the Wake Up America show today. The number one selling product of all time at forlibertyshop.com, Jeffersonian Java, still has the same great taste, that delicious light roast with lots of caffeine. Head over to forlibertyshop.com this morning. Check out all the beautiful redesigns of our packages. You can see all of the boxes that we have here looking beautiful, and of course, extremely delicious. I'm all hopped up this morning on Knox's Continental Kick, which reminds me, the bonus content today, we've been experimenting and spending a little bit more money to increase the quality of our AI generations. So today we actually made an anime mini documentary. So if you guys are anime fans, we actually have a 5-minute mini documentary about the story of Henry Knox. And if you guys want to see the anime mini documentary, all we have to do is raise $100 either in Rumble Rant purchases, Rumble Rants, or in purchases made at forlibertyshop.com. So go buy some Knox's Continental Kick K-Cups, and that will help to unlock the bonus content. And you get to see our little 5-minute anime mini documentary today, which is the new style that we're experimenting with. Good? Good. All right, let's get this show on the road. What do you say? I should have prepped that before I decided to just hop into this transition.
One is making some major mistakes in policy-wise, because they make fuel very expensive. So our fuel is around $2 per gallon more than the average in the United States. And the reason is because the Californian legislators somehow feel like they don't want to have a refinery in California. So the refineries now go to Texas. So now you have to go and ship all the oil to Texas, then you do the refining, and then you go and ship it back again. But what do you think what happens when you ship? That creates pollution. So it is absolutely contradictory to what they believe in. So they're a little confused, which is not unusual with legislators, maybe. I remind you.
Yeah. Thank you, Arnold. Wow. So picture this. It's June of 2026. Before sunrise, Long Beach, California, a contractor pulls his work truck into a Chevron, and a plumber, an electrician, a roofer, it doesn't matter. Guy burns a lot of fuel driving from job to job. He swipes his card, he lifts the nozzle, the pump clicks past $5 a gallon, then $5.50, then $5.70. His tank is half full. He's $83 in. 800 miles east in Boston, another contractor is filling the exact same work truck for more than $2 less per gallon. Same work truck, same global crude market, but not the same fuel market. California made their own market more expensive. One of these guys pays a political tax for living where he lives, and the political tax has become about $1.67 a gallon. The national average this morning is about $4.04. The California average is $5.71. That's from AAA. The political tax, of course, has a name. It's the California Democratic Party. And Arnold Schwarzenegger's seen there calling it out. Schwarzenegger, he sat down for this interview and he said something that the ruling class of his own state does not want you to hear. Arnold said California has a major refining capacity and Californians are still paying through the nose for the privilege. Arnold said the state is making local refining harder and then leaning more on imports to fill the gap. There is a ton of oil in California that they're sitting on, and they cannot get those prices down. Real quick, I see that our friend Mo Farmer over there was asking if we're going to talk about the FBI terrorist UFC wrap-up. There are two major stories this morning that I just do not have the capacity to be able to cover because, one, we don't have the time, and two, I have to do a lot more reading and researching on it. One is that story, which if that story still has legs tomorrow, I will cover it. But then there's a huge story that I know everybody's talking about this morning, and I'll mention it, but I wasn't able to read the entire report, so I can't just run into a segment blind. But it's the Pakistani rape gang story, which I was reading. Around approximately 250,000 girls were trafficked, raped, and basically handed over to these Muslim Pakis in the United Kingdom for torture and rape, and in many cases, murder. This is a huge story, and I know people are talking about it, and I know people are like, well, why aren't you talking about it today? Well, I need time to digest that report. I need time to read that report. And so I will bring that story to you in the best way that I can, but I don't want to be unprepared for that story. I want to give it the coverage that it deserves because it is way too huge for me to just rush into it. I know a lot of podcasters, a lot of newscasters are more than happy to just jump on the biggest news of the day immediately, but I don't do that. That's not what we do here. We make sure that we have good, well-researched, in-depth analysis for you so that you can actually have some value here. And I know that there are other people that are covering that this morning, and I don't want to chase anybody away, but we're not going to get into those stories this morning. I just want you to know that I am monitoring them, and I will be reading and researching them today. So if those stories still have legs tomorrow, which I imagine the second story I mentioned will, the first one probably won't. We'll see. Then I will cover those. Okay. John and Casey, good morning. How you doing, guys? Good to see you all. So we're talking about gas prices. Gas prices finally starting to tick their way down thanks to the successful conclusion, hopefully, of the war in Iran. So Arnold's bigger point here about what's happening in California is right. So even if the shipping route that these drivers are taking is more complicated than one clean Texas round trip, the whole system that they have set up is a scam. California Democrats have spent 20 years punishing the people who make gasoline inside their own state and chasing the oil manufacturers out of California, suing them, shaming them, passing a bill designed to make the next refinery that gets built in California unprofitable. So refineries in California keep closing. The supply chain keeps getting longer. The bill, of course, to pay all this stuff lands on the working class people that Sacramento claims to represent. This week, though, makes the story unavoidable. Oil prices just dropped hard because the U.S. and Iran cooled off after weeks of military tension. Reuters reported crude falling about 5% to a 3-month low yesterday, June 16th. So the Iran de-escalation helped everybody, including California, but it didn't erase California's structural premium. The state still sat at $5.71 while the national average was $4.04. So global oil still matters, but California adds its own premium on top of all of this. And that premium comes from policy, from geography, from special fuel rules, from taxes, and then their shrinking refinery base because California is chasing out all the refineries. Sacramento built a fuel island on purpose. No major pipeline brings gasoline into California from anywhere else in America. This is true. I was shocked when I saw that. So the California Energy Commission says it in plain English. Gasoline used in California is either refined inside the state or it's shipped in by ocean vessel. The existing product pipelines mostly run out of California, exporting West Coast fuel to Arizona and Nevada. So if a refinery breaks down inside of California, then replacement fuel has to show up on an ocean tanker. And that also often comes from Asia. The CEC says overseas resupply can take 3 weeks to reach a California marine terminal. So the price, of course, climbs the whole time that's going on. And while that's going on, the working family is paying out the nose. And the press release out of Sacramento, you guess who they're blaming. They're not blaming the policymakers. They're blaming the oil manufacturers. Right? They're blaming the people that that the government is chasing out. The left in California, of course, has made local energy production politically toxic, and then they replaced it with this longer, costlier supply chain run by tanker captains from Asia. And then they call this, we know what they call this whole arrangement, environmentalism. Now, if you drive up Interstate 680 north of San Francisco, you'll pass the Valero refinery at Benicia. From the freeway, it just looks like a small city of steam stacks and storage tanks the size of office buildings. A crew of hundreds of people keep this whole thing running around the clock, and a lot of them have been at this refinery for decades. A lot of these people grew up in Benicia. Their fathers and grandfathers worked the same lines and the same manufacturing plants. By April of next year, if this schedule holds the current situation, then that refinery is going to stop refining. Hundreds of working class families are going to face the same kind of paycheck shock that isn't going to show up in Sacramento's climate press releases. And Northern California is going to lose a major source of its own gasoline. Remember, they're not getting gasoline piped in from anywhere else. They got to bring it in from Asia. This is the same party that's always complaining. They won't shut up about working class jobs. And meanwhile, they're helping push hundreds of these jobs into upheaval. The state's official plan for replacing the gasoline that Benicia used to make it is to import it by ship. So Sacramento tells Californians that the local refinery pollutes too much to keep open. And the answer is order the same product from refineries in other countries, put it on diesel-burning tankers, and float it across the Pacific. The emissions from all that shipping do not vanish because they happen offshore. The carbon goes into the same atmosphere no matter whose ledger it gets counted on. So Sacramento is not running climate policy. They're running public relations with a climate label. The EIA has laid this whole system out in plain language. California requires a special clean-burning gasoline blend. So it costs more to produce this. It costs more to produce. Refineries in other states mostly don't bother making this gas. So when California needs emergency supply, the rest of America can't fill the gap quickly, even if they wanted to. Rescue fuel for California has to come from inside of California's own shrinking refinery base, or from overseas refineries that make the California recipe on contract for a premium. And the refinery base is shrinking under the weight of California's policy model. Phillips 66 announced the closure of their Wilmington refinery in the LA area, 139,000 barrels a day of capacity gone. Valero announced the Benicia closure for April of 2026. EIA reported the state is going to lose 17% of their oil refining capacity in a single year. 17%. That's huge. California taxes oil harder than almost any state in America. You think that gas taxes in Missouri are high? The state gasoline excise tax in California is 61 cents a gallon. The federal excise tax is 18 cents. So, and then add carbon market costs, local fees, environmental program costs, and the price premium of that special blend is astronomical. So the guy in Long Beach pays nearly $6 a gallon because of everything I just listed, not because of something OPEC did, not because of greedy oil companies. Now, Governor Newsom, he's blaming the oil companies. The Attorney General opens price gouging investigations, right? It's you know who's gouging. It's the 60 cents from Sacramento tax. The legislature, of course, is out there saying we need transparency in pricing. We've got transparency. We know what's making this gas so expensive. The same Democrats who voted to make refining expensive and legally dangerous are now stunned that the few remaining refineries charge more for what they produce. Adam Smith called this racket for what it was back in 1776. Okay, same year America declared independence. The Wealth of Nations is the foundational text of modern political economy, and it explains why some countries get rich and others stay poor. Because national wealth is not a gold in a vault. It's not Fort Knox. National wealth is people doing specialized work and trading it freely across a wide market. Smith opens the book with the story about the pin factory. If you've ever taken an economics class, you probably know the story of the pin factory. One guy alone who's a craftsman can maybe produce a single pin a day. 10 guys, each doing one step, can crank out tens of thousands. The specialization is where modern wealth actually comes from. And then comes the line that matters for California. Smith says that the division of labor is limited by the extent of the market. So in plain English, specialization only works when people can trade widely and easily. Shrink the market and you shrink specialization. Shrink specialization and you raise the cost of everything. The left in Sacramento, they shrunk their own fuel market on purpose. They built policy around a market with no major inbound product pipeline. In other words, they shrunk the market. They chased out the refineries. They've mandated a unique blend of gasoline that nobody else wants to make, and they've pushed replacement supply onto slow boats from overseas. So this is the whole leftist economic program in one state. Attack production at home, import the product from somewhere that cameras aren't pointed, and blame the company that still delivers what the law made impossible to make. So if you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, good morning. I'm your host, Austin Peterson. We're glad and thankful to have you here. Click the like button if you haven't already. We'd be glad to have you become a regular guest of the Wake Up America show if you're enjoying this content. Click the like button and then click the follow button. Again, if today is your first time watching the Wake Up America show, we'd love to have you come back and join us. This show streams live 5 days a week, Monday through Friday from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. We're all working towards unlocking that sweet, sweet bonus content. The 250th anniversary collection has been just going bonkers. We have had, for the last 3 or 4 days, a hockey stick of growth over at the Grift Shop because everybody wants this shirt, the America 76 250 year shirt. Now, the America 76 250 years t-shirt is available at 4libertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. When you head to 4libertyshop.com, you're going to see a beautiful variety of colors. But don't sleep on the entire 250th anniversary collection, guys. When you go to 4libertyshop.com, my recommendation to you is that you throw a America 76 250 years t-shirt in your cart and then check out all of the beautiful new box designs for our coffee. Stephanie standardized our founding flavors coffee, and we just got, I ordered every single box that we make almost, and they just came in yesterday. They're absolutely beautiful, guys. Franklin's Electric Elixir, one of the top sellers over at the Grift Shop. If you go to 4libertyshop.com and you throw 2 or more items in your cart, use the code BUY2GET15, guys, and you'll save 15% on your entire order. Thank you guys so much for all of your support here on the Wake Up America show, helping us to grow this network, helping us to pay salaries, meet those payroll tax obligations that the government steals from us every 2 weeks. If you're already subscribed to the coffee, then you will automatically get your delivery with the new box design. So these also make really great gifts. So it's probably too late for Father's Day, of course. But just think about it. If you guys buy boxes of coffee like these and you're going to go to a party, if you're the type of person who does go outside and touch grass, then and you like to go to parties and hang out with friends in real life, Certainly, I don't do such things. But if you do like to give people nice gifts, then these make wonderful gifts for people in your life that that love the Founding Fathers. So head on over to forlibertyshop.com this morning, guys. Get yourself a box of Founding Flavors coffee. Get yourself the America 76 250 Years t-shirt and the 250th anniversary embroidered American flag polo as well. I know you guys are going to love it. And yeah, unlock the bonus content.
40 years ago, the Southern Poverty Law Center bankrupted the Klan and later recovered millions from neo-Nazi groups, with lawsuits representing victims of violence. But Tuesday, the tables turned. The Justice Department charged the organization with fraud for allegedly misleading donors and lying to financial institutions by paying members of violent extremist groups millions of dollars to act as informants.
The SPLC was not dismantling these groups. It was instead manufacturing the extremism it purports to oppose by paying sources to stoke racial hatred.
Including, the indictment alleges, a leader of the 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, who, quote, attended the event at the direction of SPLC, made racist postings under the supervision of the SPLC, and helped coordinate transportation to the event for several attendees. But Law Center interim president Brian Fair said the group had long used informants and called the indictment a political attack by the Trump administration.
They have made no secret of who they want to protect and who they want to destroy.
You have to wonder if this...
Attorney Scott Frederickson questioned the Justice Department's legal theories.
I'm
Can
sure
the
he
federal
did.
government persuade a jury that the Southern Poverty Law Center was out there funding extremism for its own purposes?
Yeah.
Manufacturing racism?
Yeah.
That's hard to believe. Obviously, they'll have their day in court.
But there have been calls to investigate the Law Center for years. In 1995, the Montgomery Advertiser was the finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for articles alleging that the center was misleading donors and wasting their money. And more recently, critics say that its hate watch list of extremists includes many mainstream conservatives. Tony?
Jan, thank you very much.
Oh, yeah. In a farmhouse in the West Virginia hills, a former physics professor named William Pierce sat down and wrote a novel called The Turner Diaries. This was a step-by-step revenge fantasy about blowing up a federal building and touching off a nationwide race war. On April 19th, 1995, a young man named Timothy McVeigh parked a Ryder truck full of fertilizer outside the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City with pages of that novel tucked into his getaway car. When the smoke cleared, 168 people were dead, and 19 of them were babies in a second-floor daycare. Pierce took the fame from that blood and built the National Alliance into one of the largest and most influential neo-Nazi organizations in modern America. Now, keep that group in your mind, because now I want you to look at a quiet house with 2 names on the mortgage and a coffee pot in the kitchen. A couple live inside. They share a bed, a dinner table, a kitchen, and a checking account. One of them is a senior intelligence official at the Southern Poverty Law Center. And this is the organization that tells CNN who counts as a Nazi. They tell the banks who to cut off, and they tell your congressman which of his constituents belongs on a hate map. Federal prosecutors say that the man asleep next to her is a paid informant embedded inside William Pierce's National Alliance. And he's living under that roof on her employer's money. Picture who paid for the roof. Picture a widow in Ohio who watched the tiki torches march through Charlottesville on her television and mailed in $50 because she wanted to stand exactly against that kind of man. Federal prosecutors say one informant tied to the National Alliance received more than $1.2 million through SPLC linked payments, and that about $140,000 in donor money later flowed into joint bank accounts that he shared with an SPLC official. The New York Post pulled the lid off the whole thing yesterday morning. In court filings, the employee is identified only as employee 2, and the informant is called F9. Prosecutors allege that the 2 were lovers who shared a home and 2 joint bank accounts, and that between 2015 and 2021, about $140,000 in donor money flowed through SPLC channels into those accounts. So that was roughly 62 cents of every dollar that ever landed in them. Now, the people who run this racket, they live for the moment. They're sloppy. There's overreach. This is an indictment. The government still has to prove every count of this in front of a jury. The SPLC, of course, denying all wrongdoing. And this is what the tragedy is of the modern left, though. They take a real evil and then they turn this into a product line with a warehouse and a sales quota. See, because a product line has to keep something on the shelf for the customer. And the customer here, in the SPLC's case, is the donor, the boomer, no kings protester, right? They're the people who need to believe that the hate is worse this year than last year. Thanks, Donald Trump. So, but when the genuine article of racism or National Socialism got too scarce to meet the demand for racism, if the government prosecutors are right, then somebody at America's most trusted anti-hate charity made a choice, and they decided to keep the shelves of racism stocked for themselves. Now, if this is true, you could say she's got blonde hair and blue eyes, so at least you could say he's got a type. She may be a chunky monkey, but she's no monkey. And now everyone is chimping out. The staff at the SPLC used to joke about the building that they worked in. They called their own gleaming 6-story headquarters in Montgomery, Alabama, the Poverty Palace, because the money that poured in to fight poverty and hate kept getting spent on marble and salaries and a massive investment portfolio instead of actual poverty. So this is the culture that the government is now describing in this federal indictment, that the SPLC field offices, the SPLC paid secret field sources from at least 2014 all the way through 2023 and routed more than $3 million to people tied to violent extremist groups. Let me see if I can pull it up right here. The lucrative business of fighting hate. Let's see if we can see it right there. There it is. The opulent headquarters of the Southern Poverty Law Center right there in Montgomery, Alabama. So this group routed more than $3 million to people tied to these Nazi groups. Prosecutors say that the organization opened bank accounts under fake company names that were never incorporated, employed no one. Exactly. Poverty pimps, Bruiser. That's another good name. Poverty pimps in their poverty palace. Pluck it up, pluck it up, pluck it up, pluck it up. So these shell organizations that they created had one job: to push donor cash someplace that no donor would ever be able to trace it. Prosecutors say that the man they call F9 earned his money by crawling inside the National Alliance and actually raising funds for the Nazis while he collected a paycheck through an SPLC account. So prosecutors say he helped to haul boxes of stolen documents out of the neo-Nazis' headquarters, and that employee 2 turned that stolen haul into a hate watch article for the SPLC website. God, this is a massive conspiracy. So the indictment alleges that the informant handed a second informant about $6,000 to stand up and to falsely claim to confess the theft so that the trail would die in a dead end. Right. So they're covering their trails. That is a felony on its face. So the funny thing is that the prosecutors say a field source who had burrowed into the white supremacist world wanted out. He didn't want to do this anymore. He wanted to hang it up. He wanted to leave the movement, stop being a monster. But according to the U.S. government, an SPLC employee offered him a monthly salary to stay exactly where he was and keep running his hate group. Now, if prosecutors prove this, the charity that raises money to destroy Nazis has cut paychecks to remain a Nazi. Those same donor dollars, prosecutors say, paid for rallies, for recruitment, and for the literature that these groups handed out to the next Timothy McVeigh. So think about the logic of this from behind the fundraising desk. A hate group that gives up and disbands is a hate group you can no longer put on a map. A Nazi who quits is a Nazi you can no longer mail to a frightened no kings protester donor as proof that the threat of growing The threat is growing in this country. So the fundraiser actually comes out ahead if the Nazi stays a Nazi. The government is now alleging the SPLC understood that math and acted on it. And then look at the people who were arrested this week for allegedly planning a terrorist attack on the America 250 celebrations at the White House. Were those people being funded by the SPLC? I think that deserves an investigation as well. Nearly $1 billion balances on a single load-bearing claim that Nazi hate is everywhere, it's rising, and that only the SPLC stands between you and the mob. I mean, the SPLC spent 40 years teaching journalists and tech executives and politicians to see a Klansman crouch behind every hedge in America. They put Charlie Kirk on this list, by the way. But when the real extremists became less useful as a fundraising inventory and actual hate started to go down, well, then all of a sudden the SPLC money helped keep some of these people active. Last week, around June 9th, a woman named Kanika Carlton stood in Grant Park in the heart of Chicago and watched a full-size wooden cross go up in flames against the night sky. And she had the presence of mind to film it. I mean, there's no image in the American history that hits harder than a burning cross. It goes straight to the Ku Klux Klan, to lynchings, to a century of night riders terrorizing black families on their own porches. So the FBI organized a hate crime look into this. And of course, every newsroom in the country knew the story that it was about to tell. And then NBC Chicago put a camera in front of a young man police had flagged as a person of interest. And the motive for this became more complicated on live television.
I don't want to wait until he may or may not get impeached. I want him gone right now.
On that video, are you threatening him?
No.
You say that you think that he should be brought to an end.
I said he deserves to stand trial to the American people. Some paraphrase, I guess. But
I think you use the word end.
That's what I mean by end. I mean by end, I don't mean like a civil war. If that is the imagery that you're trying to imagine.
Lou says he built this cross after carrying wooden slats from his near West Side apartment to Grant Park last Tuesday afternoon. He showed the red ball cap that he put on the top beam and used lighter fluid and toilet paper to get it all going.
I put a red hat to signify the MAGA hat, the Make America Great Again hat. So that was... yeah, that's what I tied on top.
But that's not visible in the one video that was taken by a motorist.
Lou says he was protesting what he calls MAGA Christian nationalist supporters and the Trump administration ruling class.
You're just scamming people. We're just scamming out of money, right? And I think that's a great reflection of how this country works.
How much that cross cost? About $50. Gonna be at least $5,000. Let's go back to 2 in the morning on January 29th, 2019, on a frozen Chicago street, a few miles from that same park. Empire actor Jussie Smollett told police that 2 men put a rope around his neck and looped a rope around his neck. They poured bleach on him and screamed that this is MAGA country in Chicago in the middle of the night. This is MAGA country. And the networks ran this coverage. I don't know if you remember this, but they ran this coverage wall to wall. It was all day, every day, the hate crime attack. Jussie Smollett speaks out. He was crying. He was full blown, high profile, ABC News exclusives. Jussie Smollett speaking out. Right. And then, of course, the networks were running this wall to wall before 2 Nigerian brothers later testified that Jussie hired him to stage the entire thing. A Chicago court jury convicted him on 5 counts of lying to police. And then, of course, the Illinois Supreme Court later threw the conviction out because they're racists. And it turned entirely on a procedural deal with prosecutors. But it didn't turn on the question of whether his story was true. Now, let's go back further to 1987 in New York, where a 15-year-old named Tawana Brawley, does anybody remember Tawana Brawley? Tawana Brawley, she was a 15-year-old woman who said that she was abducted. She was abducted and raped by a group of white men. Right. Now, some of them were in law enforcement, she says. A grand jury examined this case and concluded that the whole account was a hoax. And one of the innocent men that Tawana Brawley named, a prosecutor named Stephen Pagonis, spent years clearing his name from this case and won a defamation verdict against Al Sharpton for pushing the lie. Now let's talk about Durham in 2006, where 88 Duke professors signed their names to a public ad that treated the accusation as a campus morality tale before the facts were ever published. North Carolina Attorney General Roy Cooper dismissed the case in 2007 and used the word innocent out loud. And the accuser herself in this case eventually admitted she had made the entire attack up out of thin air. The pattern even put on a military uniform because at the Air Force Academy prep school, racist slurs turned up scrawled on dorm message boards. A general gave a fiery viral speech about dignity and respect, and the whole country clapped like seals. Well, guess what? The academy later admitted that the messages were written by one of the cadet candidates who had supposedly been targeted by them. Some of you might remember January of 2019, a 16-year-old named Nick Sandman stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in a red hat, and the national press sliced a few seconds of footage into proof that this child was the face of American bigotry. Until longer footage, of course, undermined the first viral framing, and CNN later settled his lawsuit. In 2020, some of you might have forgotten, a garage pull rope at Talladega became a national news panic until the FBI found no crime and confirmed that the rope had hung in this stall since the previous October before the driver was ever assigned to it. And how could we forget in Oberlin, Ohio, a family bakery that had fed the town for generations got branded racist over a shoplifter who pleaded guilty, got mobbed. They got mobbed by the college next door, and then they had to win a jury verdict in court just to get their good name back. Every one of these stories showed up too clean, too perfectly cast, flattering the exact villain that the newsroom was already desperate to convict. The first version fits the fantasy, and then it went everywhere while the country was still angry. But the correction comes out months later on page B12, where it earned nothing for the people who had already cashed in on the lie. The SPLC indictment, the federal government going after the SPLC, this is the first time that we actually get to read a federal charging document laying out the wiring diagram underneath all of these fake hate crimes. Now, if you walk into almost any major university in this country, you're going to find a suite of offices with soft lighting and a long mission statement on the wall. And that office is going to be staffed by people whose entire livelihood depends on the campus being a dangerous place for the wrong students. That office is never going to call a press conference to announce that racism went down this year and the budget can be cut. Heritage, using its own sample, counted an average of 3.4 diversity staff for every 100 tenured faculty in the sample that they took. And a payroll that heavy does not feed itself on good news, guys. It feeds itself on incidents. So when genuine racist incidents run thin, then the definition, of course, will get stretched to cover the salaries. Right? A sideways glance at a person of color will be reclassified as violence. A clumsy joke becomes trauma that will require a response team and dozens of protests and rallies. A garden variety shoplifting arrest is going to get promoted into a civil rights emergency with a candlelight vigil attached. Every black person killed by police is going to become George Floyd. The human being, of course, on the wrong end of the accusation is not going to get any presumption of innocence whatsoever because the people who built this system, of course, treat the accusation itself as sacred and the accused as disposable. Because equal protection is not going to survive in a country where a pointed finger from the right nonprofit functions as a conviction. Now let's walk back to that quiet house where we started. The one with the Nazi and the Nazi hunter sharing a checkbook. The widow in Ohio who mailed her $50 she will never get back. And that's the small crime here. The large crime is what this does to the next person who is actually hurt. The next person accused by the Al Sharptons and Tawana Brawleys of the world. Every manufactured noose makes the real one a little easier to dismiss. And every staged attack in this country teaches a few more Americans to roll their eyes at the next victim who walks into a police station telling the truth. So the counterfeit doesn't just steal the donor's money. It's going to steal the moral credit that the genuine victim was going to need. The civil rights movement that won this country's respect fought to make the law blind to the color of a man's skin. Well, now we see that that has been an enormous mistake. We have created an industry that wears the clothing of civil rights and works around the clock to paint the color black into every single major issue that they can find. Because a country, if we actually saw through Martin Luther King's desire for a colorblind society, these people would produce nothing that they could put up for sale. A federal grand jury now alleges that the most worshipped hate tracker in America used donor money to keep an extremist embedded in that world and then use the product of that world as fundraising inventory. Treat that as the business model working the way it was always going to work once fighting hate became a way to get rich. America still has racism in it, only the racism in America is anti-white. And the entire leftist economy is built on this. America has a left-wing industry that has run clean out of the genuine article and has got caught in the back room printing the counterfeit. Thank you, Quest Fanning. Says hoaxers should be held accountable, he says, as if they've been convicted of a hate crime themselves. Thank you very much for that donation. Ra-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. If you're just tuning into the Wake Up America show, I am your host, Austin Peterson. We're glad and thankful to have you here on the show. If you click the like button, that will support us totally for free. If you guys want to watch the Wake Up America show and get notifications when we go live, which is Mondays through Fridays from 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. Click the follow button as well. Come back and join us. When you click follow over on the Rumble live stream, then your Rumble app will notify you when the show goes live. But just put us on your calendar in the mornings. Make us part of your morning destination. And come back and join us Mondays through Fridays, 7 to 9 a.m. Central Time. We've got a great second hour of our show coming up. Judge Andrew Napolitano asks a question, are we a republic or are we an empire? At 8:30 a.m. Central Time today, we're going to do something a little bit different. We've got Chris Salcedo on the show, and he's going to be live on his show, and we're going to be live on our show, so we're going to be live on each other's show. It's the first time we've ever tried something like this. They call it a simul stream. So it could be great. It could all fall apart and make me look like an idiot. So if you guys want to see me like walking a tightrope, trying to figure out all this technology live and maybe even potentially failing at it and having a good laugh at my expense, which, you know, isn't that the most fun? Anyway, then hang out with us at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. We'll have Chris Salcedo on the Wake Up America show. We're going to have a phenomenal we've got a phenomenal second hour for you today. We also have bonus content available for you to unlock. But before I tell you about that, first a word from our sponsor, expatmoney.com/World War III. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking to yourself, Austin, why would I ever download a report about being an expat? I am never going to leave the United States. Well, I'm not going to leave the United States either. But let me tell you why I advertise for Expat Money. It's not just the money that they pay me to read their live reads, because obviously you could say, well, you're only doing it because of the money. No, I get offers from people all the time to do advertisements and things on the show, and there's a lot of things that I don't believe in. Like I'm not a supplements person, for example. I won't sell supplements, and supplements people offer me a lot of money. It's very tempting. I've got a baby and I got another baby on the way. You'd think, oh, Austin, well, just take the money. No, I can't do that, and I don't have to do that. And the reason why I don't have to do that is because when people like Byron Norris do what they do and they donate like $5 here and there, when you guys make purchases from our store, then I don't have to do that. So I work with Expat Money because I like the business model, because I like the idea. I'm interested in finance. If you're looking for a guy in finance, 6'5", 6'3" or whatever the song goes. Then if you guys are looking for new ways to invest your money and you're thinking about doing it internationally, you don't have to just want to go and live in Argentina. You don't have to just want to go and live in Panama. Then you can also want to like diversify your cash overseas. So that's why I work with Expat Money, because I think it is smart to at least understand your business strategies. So support the show, guys, and get more information. Head to expatmoney.com/World War III. Download the free report that they have over at the website that I'm giving you guys. expatmoney.com/World War III. Sign up, get that free report. They don't spam the crap out of you guys with emails. I've signed up for it, downloaded the free report. They email you like once a week, maybe. And it's just really good information. It's useful. So you don't have to think, oh, I'm an expat, I have to go live in some of these countries. But it's good to know what the backup plans are. I was curious about it, and I learned a lot of good new information. So download the free report today, guys. Go to expatmoney.com/World War III. And support the Wake Up America show. Support our sponsors because they support us. What do you say? Just a couple of quick house cleaning thing, guys. I know that you guys are really interested to talk about what's happening in the UK with this massive story about 250,000 girls allegedly trafficked to Pakistani rape gangs. It's a huge story, and I want to cover it on the show, but I don't want to do a story in the wrong way. I don't want to cover a story like that without having all of the knowledge. And quite frankly, I have not read the full report. I didn't have time to read that last night, but I am going to read that report today and make sure that I have all of the knowledge that I need to be able to cover a story like that in its totality. It deserves the respect of me being fully informed before I just start spouting off my opinions about this. Obviously, this is horrible. This is terrible, but I will not make light of a story like that. I will not take it lightly. I will only cover stories that I can verify, that I can double, triple fact check. I mean, we run our stories through fact check after fact check after fact check on this because I don't want to get sued. But also I respect you. I respect my audience. And so that's why we're not going to talk about that story today. I'm going to put that a bookmark in that, and I know you want to hear about it, and I know you want to hear my take on it. Immigration, remigration, deportation, the cult of Islam, all of those things we will discuss. It's just not going to be on today's show. Okay, so just letting you know. Coming up in 5 minutes, Judge Andrew Napolitano is going to join us live. Are we a republic or are we an empire? Up next. Judge Andrew Napolitano is bringing out this sharp new column answering the question every American ought to be asking. The judges next. Don't go away. Go to the Grift Shop. Help unlock the bonus content. Today, we have an anime mini documentary for you. So if you want to see it, then head on over to forlibertyshop.com during the live show. Make some purchases. Unlock that bonus content. You'll see our mini documentary instead of commercials. This is the Wake Up America show on the For Liberty Network. Washington spent 8 years making sure nobody knew where he was. Troop movements, secret dispatches. The man was a ghost. So when a barista leaned out a window and asked for his exact location in exchange for points they called stars, he looked at his flag and said, "I've already got my stars. 13 of them. Keep your dignity and your location intact. Grab a box of Washington's Revolutionary Roast at forlibertyshop.com. 'Tis the year of our Lord, 1801. President Trump Jefferson casts his gaze o'er the sovereign Potomac and beholds a most wretched spectacle upon the waters. From the cursed shores of Tripoli and the welfare coffers of distant Minnesota comes the brazen Captain Ilhan Omar, commanding her fleet of Barbary pirates. She demands her ransom, billions in reparations. Yet one instrument of fortitude suffices, a steaming chalice of Jeffersonian Java, bold and unapologetic from For Liberty Shop. No more tribute to rogues, he thunders, and dispatches the Navy and Marines to smash Omar's fleet asunder. Trump Jefferson stands triumphant as Omar's plunder meets the end it deserved back in Minnesota. Jeffersonian Java, the coffee that gives true Americans the courage to refuse tribute and rebuke fraud. Procure yours at forlibertyshop.com and make America caffeinated again.
Hark! I've discovered a brew so bold, 'T will ignite the spirit of liberty. This is not merely coffee, 'tis the very essence of American boldness. Give me coffee, or give me death. Go to For Liberty Shop to procure yours now.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama.
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that at the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're...
Welcome back to Wake Up America. I'm Austin Peterson. It's time to rise and freedom. With America's 250th birthday just a couple weeks ago away, my next guest is asking the question that the political class in Washington does not want to answer. The Declaration of Independence stood on two pillars: natural rights and limited government. 250 years later, Judge Andrew Napolitano argues both pillars have been inverted, and what we actually live under looks a lot more like an empire than a republic. He's a former Superior Court judge, a constitutional scholar, and one of the clearest voices on liberty in America today. The host of the Judging Freedom podcast, which you can download on all of your mobile devices. Judge Andrew Napolitano, welcome back to the show. It's nice to see you again, sir.
Thank you, Austin. It's always nice to see you. And as always, thank you for the generous introduction, my friend.
Glad to have you here, Judge. I was listening to a podcast yesterday about Adam Smith and the Wealth of Nations in 1776. And his book essentially predicted everything that we see today in terms of how government squashes the individual liberty, our right to trade, our right to transact. You know, he talked about economic concepts that people like our friends over at the Mercatus Institute, the Cato Institute, the Mises Institute, that they have only really started to flesh out and develop today. From 1776 to today, have things gotten better economically for the average working man in the United States? Have they gotten worse? Something in between? How would you characterize America on our upcoming 250th birthday?
Well, obviously, the Industrial Revolution was a rising tide that lifted all ships, and life in general is better. Freedom is worse. And of course, government controls are far worse. We don't have the free market in the United States. We have a fascist form of government. That's fascist with a lowercase f, although there are aspects of militarism to it, but fascist in the sense of private ownership, but government control. I mean, I remember once when you were producing my show at Fox, and I had 3 or 4 Fox business colleagues in the studio at that horseshoe-shaped anchor desk we used. And I said, you guys are pretty smart. Can you find anything in this room that's not regulated by the federal government? And they couldn't. They couldn't. The legs on the chair, the pigment and the paint on the walls, the strength of the electricity, the lenses on the cameras, they couldn't find anything that was not regulated by the federal government. So we have an extreme form of government control. And since every regulation either compels or takes, by definition, these regulations reduce freedom. We don't have the freedom in the country that Madison and Jefferson thought they were leaving us. And could you imagine Madison and Jefferson thinking that this thing, my mobile device in my car, in my pocket, would allow the federal government to follow me wherever I go? What about the Fourth Amendment? It's a search and seizure. Well, if they don't use it against you in a criminal prosecution, fill in the blank, you'll never know that they've surveilled you. That's the second half of that statement. So the government doesn't believe in natural rights. It believes it can curtail them. And the government certainly doesn't believe in limited government, because we have a government without limits. In the article, I just list some of the things that the government tries to get away with today. And the real culprit here is war. And the first war that the United States fought after defeating the British was an undeclared war against the French. And during that undeclared war against the French, the government enacted the Alien and Sedition Acts, which punished speech critical of the government. It's 4 different statutes. One of them is still the law. It is still the law. If your speech materially harms the government, I thought Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. I mean, that's just one example of many about how the government doesn't recognize that our rights come from our humanity and they're inalienable, Jefferson and the Declaration. The government doesn't recognize that our rights can only be taken away after due process, Madison in the Fifth Amendment. The government really doesn't recognize any limitation on its power. The government we have today, where we have a would-be emperor who does whatever he wants, and a pliant, tepid, fearful, gutless Congress who gives him almost always whatever he wants.
Judge, I know how I would answer this question, but I don't want to color it before I get your answer on this, because I'm deeply curious. Which era in American history do you think that the United States was the most free? Obviously, in the founding era, you had slavery. You didn't have all these regulations, but you had slavery. And in the modern era, you call our economy a fascist economy. So which era would you say was the freest in American history, and why?
Probably the period between the war between the states and the presidency of Woodrow Wilson. I mean, the progressive era began the monstrous federal regulations. And right after the war between the states, there were no regulations. There was no income tax, except the illegal one that Lincoln and the radical Republicans imposed during the war between the states, but it had gone. There was rapid increase in wealth and manifestations of freedom. Look, the former slaves were free. Their lives were not happy ones in the South, but they were no longer kept in bondage. That is probably the freest time in American history. Were it not for slavery, I would name another time. But clearly, once slavery was abolished, totally unnecessary to kill 750,000 people in the Civil War in order to abolish it, when every other country on the planet abolished it peacefully, almost all of them at about the same time. Thank you, Abraham Lincoln. You'd have to give the benefit of the doubt to that time between the war between the states and the progressive era.
That's exactly what I would have answered with Judge. There's a phenomenal book that I'm sure you've read or seen, which is I think it's called The Not So Wild West, that's published by the Mises Institute, and it talks about the era of gold and God and guns and of property rights. In the late 1800s, obviously we had the Indian Wars and we had, expansionism to a degree, but it definitely was an era of experimentation when the ideals of Enlightenment thinkers like Jefferson and Adam Smith and others were actually being put into practice because, well, the federal government just couldn't control everything. They didn't have the ability to control everything in that time period,
right,
Judge.
Right. You're 100% correct. Now, look, when you ask which time period produce the most freedom, I suppose the real answer is it depends who you ask. Freedom for whom? There certainly wasn't freedom for indigenous peoples. There certainly was only nominal freedom for former slaves and their offspring. But for most Americans who had been here for a generation or so, there was vast opportunities, and you've just articulated a few of them. And then along came the do-gooders. I mean, I've often argued that Wilson was a worse president than FDR, second only to Lincoln, because of the structures that he put in place. Without those structures, I don't think we would have had an FDR. Without a Federal Reserve, without an income tax, without changing the way the states send senators to the Senate, without the administrative state. All those things made it easy for FDR to do what he did to bring about even more socialism and more control in the 30s.
Here's a hot button political topic for you, Judge. I wonder if you'll approach this with me. I don't mind being called a sexist because I get called everything every day. Sexist, racist, misogynist. Those words just bounce off of me now. But I like to consider the outcome of the 19th Amendment and its consequences. Now, when you look at women's voting patterns since the passage of the 19th Amendment, you can see that overwhelmingly women vote for more socialism. With the suffragette movement of the late 1800s culminating in the right of women to vote came temperance. So the prohibitionist movement was born on the back of these suffragettes. Lips that shall touch liquor shall not touch ours. So we live in a society where the war of the sexes is played out in voting patterns, Judge. The 19th Amendment, since its passage, has given us a massive increase in the size of government. Do you think that we can trace the voting patterns of women since the passage of the 19th Amendment in 1919 to the massive increase in the size and scope of government, or do you think that those two things are not connected?
No, I think you can trace it. I mean, that doesn't justify the suppression of the vote. There were states that suppressed the votes of Catholics because they believed the Catholics were more loyal to the Pope than they were to the United States. So you can't suppress the right to vote based upon the presumption that you don't like the way that right is going to be exercised. However, there's no question but that the patterns that you articulate are real and factually and historically based. It's just, I don't know if it's a function of biology, but it is a historical fact. One of those patterns was corrected by getting rid of prohibition, but we still have this monstrosity of a government on top of us. I don't think, you've heard me say this before, that the federal government can last much longer because of the debt that it has created. Soon people will stop lending it money because of a fear that it won't be able to pay them back.
But isn't it the case though, Judge, that if you owe the bank $100, that's your problem, but if you owe the bank $1 trillion, that's the bank's problem?
Well, unless you're Elon Musk, yeah, I guess you could. I guess you can say that. But what would happen if the government said, we can't afford the $1 trillion a year, which is what it is now, in interest payments? We're still paying debt on the money Woodrow Wilson borrowed to fund World War I. Oh, that's really mind-boggling that debt hasn't been retired. It's been rolled over, and the interest rates are different, but it hasn't been retired. The last time I looked at it, it wasn't that much money, but it's just an example. He borrowed $30 billion. We've paid more than $15 billion in interest. That's a 50% interest rate. Only the federal government, only somebody spending somebody else's money would pay an actualized interest rate of that magnitude. But I mentioned the government collapsing because there's really no end to this, and all the giveaways. There are Thomas Massey's and Rand Paul's, but there's no organized political party that affects the outcome of the votes in the Congress. And then, of course, there's AIPAC and the Zionist lobby, which has a control over 2/3 of the Congress. So the collapse of the federal government is really the only way out of this. And I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime. It may happen in yours, but it probably will happen in the lifetime of your children and your children and your grandchildren, Austin.
This is such a good conversation. Now, Judge, we talked about the 19th Amendment and its consequences. I personally believe that voting is a privilege, not a right. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I do. And I, as you may recall, got pilloried for saying it's not a fundamental right at Fox. I mean, fundamental rights come from our humanity. Voting is something that the government or the collective society permits. It's not a right.
Yeah, that's completely
the left likes to think it's a right, and it was up to them, every human being above the age of reason.
I love this conversation because now we can take this conversation and move it over to the 17th Amendment, Judge, because the 17th Amendment took the privilege of voting for our U.S. senators in our states away from the state legislators and gave it to the people. Woodrow Wilson passed the 17th Amendment through the Congress, and then it was ratified by the states. Well, I think you and I, was it the 16th or the 17th Amendment that was not properly ratified? Maybe it was the 16th Amendment.
The 14th Amendment was not properly ratified. Unfortunately, I think both the 16th and the 17th were. The 14th Amendment, New Jersey and Ohio rescinded their ratifications before the vote was totaled, and the Congress counted their ratifications. So the Congress ignored their rescissions. I mean, there are parts of the 14th Amendment I like, and I'm glad we have it, but it was not ratified. There's a 1,500-page study of this. I happen to be one of the few people that has it because it was self-published by Alfred Avens. He's no longer with us. Dean Avens was the dean of Delaware Law School when I first taught there, and he spent his adult career demonstrating how the 14th Amendment was never ratified. But the 16th Amendment, which changed the way senators were elected. I once wrote a piece, is there any part of the Constitution that is unconstitutional? And I argued that is it, because it struck at the core of Madison's three-sided table. On one side was the state, was the government as an entity represented by the president. On another side were the people. They're there in the House of Representatives. On the third side was the states. Look, the third word of the Constitution is erroneous. We the people. It was we the states that created the Constitution. There were no popular votes on it. It was states ratifying. It was states giving up a limited amount of their sovereignty to create a limited central government. Once the senators began representing the people rather than the states were kicked out of that three-sided table, and the very ideological basis of the new government was eradicated. This was also the constitutional law professor from Princeton who thought he was smarter than everybody else, Woodrow Wilson.
I was reading the story of Woodrow Wilson's blunder of the capture of Pancho Villa, and I didn't know this story. They sent hundreds of thousands of troops into Mexico to chase down this Mexican bandit, and were completely unable to do so, even with a far superior army. So Wilson blundered quite a few things in his career and was embarrassed for it, and was always trying to make up for his mistakes. Judge, on the question of the 17th Amendment and of the reasoning why the Founding Fathers put that, at the time, the argument was that word doesn't travel as fast. We don't have the internet. Regular people didn't have the kinds of critical, crucial insider knowledge about the people who were candidates for the U.S. Senate that people in the modern era have. So Wilson and the progressive argument, the Wilsonian argument for the passage of the 17th Amendment was to say that now the people are ready and they are capable and they are knowledgeable and information is more readily available. And so the people should have the privilege of electing their own U.S. senators versus these insider state officials. How would you respond to the progressive view of that? Because it is true that we do have access to more information, and yet people don't seem necessarily all that much more educated. So is it an elitist argument that we make from the libertarian angle that the state legislators know better than the common people? How do we frame this?
No. The Wilsonian argument is elitist. At the same time this was happening, the federal government was funding eugenics to decide which genetic strains were superior to others. This is so typical of the Wilsonian view of a government by experts allowing the little people to participate in it. There were more newspapers in 1789 than there were in 1903. People had every opportunity to know what candidates were thinking. The idea behind the legislature of a state choosing a senator was to represent the state as a state, not the people in the state. And if legislatures didn't like the way senators voted, they were removed because they were there to represent the state government, so that the state government didn't have taken away from it more authority than it agreed to cede to the federal government in the Constitution. This is such a bastardized version of history that the progressives have tried to and still do visit upon us, and it's just another reason why Wilson was truly a monster to a constitutional republic.
Judge Andrew Napolitano with the constitutional question. Somebody was saying in the chat this morning that, man, they haven't heard the judge talking about this since the days of Mike Church and Sirius XM Patriot Radio. Fiery Judge Knapp, they're loving you this morning, Judge.
Oh, well, thank you, Austin. You have that way of bringing out the libertarian bona fides. You know, I always used to say, except when Walter Block is here, I'm the most libertarian person in the
room. It is true, Judge. Now, Judge, you close your column with one question. Which form of government are we celebrating on the 4th of July? Give us your honest answer. What and what is the American citizen actually celebrating? What would it take to get the republic back?
I don't know what it would take to get the republic back. probably a breakup of the federal government, but we are celebrating a collapsed empire, not a declining empire, because declining implies that the decline could turn around, but a crashing empire, losing its influence around the world and destroying liberty and property at home. The resolution would be a breakup of the federal government, like the Soviet Union collapsed. A peaceful breakup of the federal government is the only resolution that I can see on the horizon. Now, if someone like Thomas Massie were elected president, and if he had a significant majority in the Congress, these are two enormous ifs. We could return to respect for natural rights and fidelity to limited government. So I suppose it is theoretically possible that that can happen, but I don't foresee it, at least not in my lifetime.
Judge, who do you have coming up on Judging Freedom?
I have Aaron Mate and Phil Giraldi tomorrow, John Mearsheimer, Colonel Douglas McGregor, and Max Blumenthal. So I continue to plod away with all of my regulars who are fan favorites, like I am to you.
Tens of millions of people tuning in every month to Judge Andrew Napolitano's Judging Freedom podcast. You should tune in too. Judge, thank you for giving us your time and your wisdom every Wednesday morning here on the Wake Up America show. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Austin. All the best.
Thank you very much, Judge Andrew Napolitano. Is it a republic or is it an empire? You can answer that question in the comments below. It's nice to see everybody here today. Only AP can get that side of Judge Andrew Napolitano out. I hope that you guys enjoyed that interview. Looks like Byron Norris and Andy Opperman and several others have been contributing Rumble Rants. Thank you guys so much for all of your financial generosity. We're so thankful to have all of our viewers and listeners here with us. We've raised $50 towards today's bonus content, which means that we're halfway to our anime mini documentary. I know that you guys love our mini documentaries, and this week we are experimenting with some new art styles. We're spending a little bit more money on the AI mini documentaries to increase the quality for you guys. So you definitely want to see what we've been up to. How do we unlock the mini documentaries so that we can watch them instead of commercials? It's really simple. You either drop Rumble Rants during the live show, or my recommendation for you guys is you head to forlibertyshop.com and you get yourself a box of Founding Flavors coffee, maybe two. People really love the 1776 leather wallets. I got the beautiful black and gold 1776 leather wallet. It's double-sided there. You can see the 1776 leather wallet available for sale at the Grift Shop, forlibertyshop.com. That's the number 4libertyshop.com. Grab yourself a box of Founding Flavors coffee while you're there. And of course, our mega popular America 76 250th tea. I think we have just enough time, guys, to, if you get your orders in, that you can get your shirt before the 4th of July. But you need to go to the shop and order it today. So don't wait. Don't hesitate. Do it right now, because then you guys will be able to get your products and wear your shirt and your items just in time for the 4th of July. So head on over to the Grift Shop at forlibertyshop.com. Keep unlocking that bonus content with your Rumble Rants and your purchases. And when we get back, we're going to do something that I've never done before, guys. We're going to do a simul stream we're going to be on the Chris Salcedo show while he's on our show. It could go wonderfully. It could go terribly. I don't know. Wish me luck. We'll be right back. This is the Wake Up America show, and you're watching the 4 Liberty Network.
Are you tired of the strange radioactive effects of leftist culture? Do you ever wonder what happened to good old-fashioned American values? Well, fear no more, because there's a new force fighting back against the cultural rot of today. Introducing Culturama, a right-of-center talk show that's taking back the future today. Hosted by none other than blonde bombshell herself, Daniela Pensack. She's not just talking, she's taking culture back. With sharp takes, brilliant guests, and a few surprises along the way. Tune in to the live video podcast twice a week, because the future doesn't have to be weird. It can be Culturama!
If there wasn't going to be somebody who was a fiery champion of liberty, somebody who would get out there and who would be aggressive, and if they wouldn't do it with more fire or passion than I had, then I would go and I would fight this battle for us. I've fought for the principles that we all share. Parties tend to be secondary to me. We're here because we believe in the principles of liberty. I am not a perfect messenger, but I think I'm a damn good one. This is a replica of our first president's flintlock pistol. You have my full support, my respect, and my gun.
I think that the heart of my philosophy is much more libertarianism than well, that's the fashionable word these days, I guess. A conservative is no longer just that. He's a libertarian and always has been.
Yet any time you and I question the schemes of the do-gooders, we're denounced as being against their humanitarian goals. They say we're always against things, we're never for anything.
What is fascism? Fascism is private ownership, private enterprise, but total government control and regulation.
Well, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so. If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. This is the issue of this election. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conservative, so-called, is the one that says less government, get off my back, get out of my pocket, and let me have more control of my own destiny.
The left in America tells us not to have kids to save the planet, but in Cuba, they stopped having kids because the state destroyed the earth.
Collectivism doesn't create justice. It creates shortages, corruption, and power for the few. I've not just seen it, I've lived it. My family escaped it. Now, the same failed ideas are being sold to a new generation. I'm here to expose the lie and defend liberty. From Cuba to Argentina to the United States, the freedom movement is rising. Cafecito Libre is the exile voice of economic truth. Cafecito Libre, premiering March 3rd as part of the For Liberty Network, only on Rumble.
In the bustling port of Boston on July 25, 1750, a boy was born who would one day move mountains, or at least move cannons across them. His name was Henry Knox. Knox grew up in modest circumstances after his father died at sea. With little formal education, he became a bookseller in Boston, running a shop called the London Bookstore. He was a large, cheerful man who loved reading military history and engineering books. When the Revolution began, Knox was already deeply interested in artillery and military science. After the fighting at Lexington and Concord in April 1775, the American forces laid siege to Boston, but they lacked heavy artillery. Without cannons, they had little hope of driving the powerful British Army out of the city. Knox approached George Washington with a bold idea: capture the cannons from the abandoned British fort at Fort Ticonderoga in northern New York and bring them to Boston. Washington approved the plan and gave Knox command of the mission. In November 1775, the 25-year-old bookseller set out with a small group of men on what would become one of the most remarkable logistical feats of the entire war. The journey was brutal from the start. Knox and his men reached Fort Ticonderoga in early December and selected 59 pieces of artillery, including heavy cannons, mortars, and howitzers. Getting them out of the fort and onto sleds was difficult enough, but moving them over 300 miles through the dead of winter was nearly impossible. They traveled across frozen rivers and through deep snow. On more than one occasion, the ice began to crack beneath the massive weight of the guns. At one point, while crossing the Hudson River, several cannons broke through the ice and sank. Knox and his men worked for hours in freezing water to recover them. Another time, a cannon sled overturned on a steep mountain trail, nearly crushing several men. Despite the constant danger and exhaustion, Knox refused to give up. He pushed his men forward day after day through snowstorms and bitter cold. They used oxen to pull the heavy sleds when possible, and dragged the guns by hand when the animals could go no farther. The journey that should have taken weeks stretched into nearly 2 months of suffering and near disasters. Finally, on January 24, 1776, Henry Knox arrived in Framingham, Massachusetts, with the artillery intact. Washington was overjoyed. The cannons were quickly moved into position on Dorchester Heights overlooking Boston. On the night of March 4, 1776, under cover of darkness and a heavy bombardment, American forces fortified the heights with Knox's guns. When dawn broke on March 5th, the British looked up in shock. Dozens of heavy cannons now pointed directly at their ships and positions in Boston. The British commander, General William Howe, realized his situation was hopeless. Rather than risk a bloody battle, he chose to evacuate the city. On March 17, 1776, the British Army and thousands of loyalists boarded ships and sailed away from Boston.
So we're going to come back live to the show, and I'll just explain to my audience that we are live. We don't have video, but we do have audio. Say hi to the Wake Up America audience, Chris.
Hello, Wake Up America audience, and to the Voice of Texas and to the Salcedo audience. This is Austin Peterson. He's a libertarian commentator, entrepreneur, former presidential and U.S. Senate candidate with sharp populist commentary, hosts Wake Up America on the For Liberty Network, where he covers politics, culture, and the current events from a Liberty First, America First perspective. Hey, man, it is great to meet you officially. I know you and I have talked out offline, we thought we had the technical stuff ironed out. So
it's fine. I'm putting your handsome Latino face up on top of mine, so it won't be a problem, Chris. I know that you are a liberty-loving guy, and I know that you have been looking from the outside, kind of looking in at the libertarian movement in the United States, and have been probably just as horrified as I have been about the state of libertarianism. Sort of the what I like to say is happening is that we've sort of abdicated the birthright that was handed to us from the founding fathers, from people like Adam Smith and others, and we sort of traded it for this rampant conspiracism that's led a lot of people into this madness. I know you saw that somebody was trying to set up an assassination plot for the 250th anniversary event the other day. Yes. And yes. I think you can trace a lot of that to the absolute rampant paranoia that has consumed the liberty movement in the United States. And it's quite distressing. I'm sure you'd agree.
Well, it is, number one. And number two, I think it's because of the distortions of the left. It's by virtue of the fact that the political party system doesn't serve us anymore. It serves itself. And the reason why there are so many people who used to vote Republican who are so disenchanted and so willing to believe the conspiracy theories is because Republicans over and over and over again have given away the trust of their voters in service to socialists and to Marxists. But there was a question I told my audience I was going to ask you, because you are a libertarian, but you are skewing away from libertarianism. And from what I'm hearing you say, it is because of the conspiracy theorist maybe I don't want to put words in your mouth, nonsense that you believe has co-opted the Libertarian Party and movement. Is that fair?
I would say pretty close. I mean, I still believe in libertarian ideals, but I definitely don't identify with American libertarianism as it's currently formulated. You're a Latino, so you probably have been following a little bit about what's going on in South America with Javier Milei, for example.
Yeah.
Javier Milei is a libertarian. The guy is an anarcho-capitalist. He is a perfect example of everything that people like myself aspire to in the United States. Afuera. This is a guy who wants to shut down every government institution that he can, and he's actually doing it. So that's what I aspire to. And when I see what Javier Milei is doing with his reforms in Argentina, it may not be perfect. The reason he got elected may have been because socialists destroyed his economy. But those are the ideas that I believe in. But I think that American libertarianism, unfortunately, I think that part of it, I actually want to allege a conspiracy, Chris. I think a lot of the paranoia is stirred up by foreign governments. I think that there are foreign governments who are acting in concert to try and skew American politics. I mean, they've been doing stuff like this since the 1960s, but the modern version of it today is coming through these influencers. I think there's a lot of paid bots online. And unfortunately, Chris, the way that psychology works is that the masses, if they see someone as having a lot of viewers, as having a lot of ideas, they equate that with being right. And so that's unfortunately what's happened, is that you have clout chasing happening in the liberty movement, and people would rather talk about the JFK assassination from the grassy knoll, and they want to litigate, the Gulf of Tonkin incident, and they want to go back to, the assassination of James Garfield. They don't want to deal with the problems of today because they're far more complex. And you know what the real sad reality is, Chris? Is that the truth is often boring. And that's what people don't want to. They don't want to deal with the truth because most people don't want to deal with change as it actually exists.
And I'm sick and tired of the soap opera. Rush Limbaugh, the great Rush Limbaugh, talked about this. Sick and tired of this soap opera because it's a nice shiny object that distracts us from what our government's doing to us. And by the way, you mentioned the bots. You and I met because some dude got on, or some chick, I have no idea, got on social media and said, Salcedo, you hate libertarians. And it's like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't hate libertarians. And then they brought you up. And I think that this is an example of trying to get, and I've always viewed libertarians as constitutional conservatives' cousins, ideologically speaking. And I've always embraced, I have a heck of a lot more in common with you than, say, Marxists and socialists in the Democrat Party, or betrayers in the Republican Party, fake Republicans, who are servicing those socialists. So, and I think that's exactly what they try to do. They try to keep us at each other's throats. And thank God you and I had the presence of mind to say, hey, why don't we talk instead of, surrendering to this thing online that says, oh, there were natural enemies and adversaries.
Yeah. Well, the problem, I think, in part is that the widespread demoralization that has occurred on the American right, part of this, like you actually see this in the Trump movement, where the you call them black pillars, people who are, doom scrollers and others, they are so demoralized. And part of that is because of foreign propaganda. But another part of it is that when you embrace a philosophy of anarchism, this is my opinion, libertarians would be very angry at me for saying this, but when you embrace a philosophy of anarchism, you have to throw aside the philosophy of the founding fathers. You're not a constitutionalist at that point, right? You no longer believe in the American experiment. And so I think you become susceptible not only to foreign propaganda, but you become susceptible to leftist propaganda. And that's why you see this horseshoe theory with many on what we call like maybe the woke right, or, to use a phrase that radio would not like, but is not illegal to say on radio, the retard right. But these are people who you see not a lot of daylight between people who claim to be, I don't know, Christian nationalists and leftists. This is why Marjorie Taylor Greene is going on Russia Today. This is why, Thomas Massey is being funded by, Qatari oil barons, and, the Quincy Institute works with the Koch people and George Soros Foundation, because they all have this sort of woke ideology. Ultimately, whether it's foreign policy or social issues, they're woke in the sense that they believe that the United States and Israel are the ultimate oppressors and colonizers, that we have been terrorizing and tyrannizing the world ever since our founding, but ever since World War II. How can you not be black-pilled? How can you not be demoralized if you buy into Howard Zinn's view of the United States? Well, I reject that. And that's why I have more in common with constitutional conservatives, why I have more in common with someone like you. And that's why I have so much in common with Donald Trump, because I don't look at America as the greatest evil in the world. Are we perfect? No. But when you see all of these people coming from all over the world for the World Cup and you see their reactions, it should be a stark reminder of how truly great the United States is. But I just think these people don't see it.
Right. And you know what, folks? By the way, you're listening to Austin Peterson. He is a libertarian. And I guess after hearing some of his worldviews, and this is the first I'm hearing about where he stands politically, I think it's fair from a constitutional conservative perspective to call him a true libertarian as opposed to what the movement has devolved into. Understandably so. I don't want to come off as condemning the libertarian movement. You got a lot of headwinds against you. But Austin Peterson is simulcasting with us here on the Chris Salcedo Show, folks. And Austin, we are a constitutional representative republic. The founding fathers set up a system of government that constrained with the Constitution government's power to harm us, and gave power to government consistent to the greatest degree possible with freedom and liberty, and to maintain a civilized society. Is the Constitution perfect? No, but it's the best dang thing going, and that's what we conservatives seek to preserve. And frankly, so many in the Republican Party are working to undermine under this rubric of bipartisanship, which has become, in my view, code for let's do it all the Democrats' way. I think what we're watching right now in the United States Senate is fake Republicans who are colluding with socialists and Marxists who have taken over the Democrat Party, and they've kind of like the serpent whispering to Eve in the garden, hey, let's make elections irrelevant. Let's grab power. Let's become the elite and not have to worry about, the Chris Salcedos of the world or the Austin Petersons of the world. Let's just grab power. And there are many, Tom Tillis, Mitch McConnell, John Cornyn, John Curtis, and so many others who are drinking this proverbial Kool-Aid. And I think that's what we're seeing when they can look in the eye of the American people at the Save America Act. 84% of us want it. They say no. And then contrast that, if you will, Austin, with Obamacare. Nobody in the majority wanted Obamacare, but they crammed it down our throats anyway. And that's the contrast I want to paint for anybody who will listen.
I've undergone revolutions in my thinking, even in the last 10 to 12 years. Many people who know me know that I ran for president as a libertarian in 2016, and I was specifically against Donald Trump because he had not governed yet, and his words, some of the things that he was supporting were things that I was vehemently opposed to. But then when I saw how he governed, I started to see his genius. And I have to say, I'm not a very humble man, but I was very humbled because I realized that Donald Trump could do things that I was incapable of, Chris. Some of the things that he foresaw were things that I didn't see coming. Some of the victories that he's won, I don't believe that I could have won. I've become a supporter of Donald Trump because I think I understand the world a little bit better. I'm a little less naive. I ran for president when I was 35 years old. I'm 45 years old now, but I see the world a little bit more clearly now, and I understand the sort of political knife fight that we're in. And I do think that it is the case that people like Cornyn and some of these people are still playing the games by the old Republican Party. Here's a perfect example of this, like the situation that we're in. So the other night at the UFC fight, one of the fighters got up and called Michelle Obama a man. Funny joke. Some people thought it was in poor taste. My wife is like, what did you think about that? Well, I thought initially, Chris, I had a conservative impulse. I thought, well, Ronald Reagan wouldn't have allowed this. They wouldn't have happened under the old days. And then I remembered the situation that we're in right now. Ronald Reagan didn't have to deal with woke politics. He wasn't having to deal with Antifa politics. He didn't have to deal with the problem of transing the kids. He didn't have to deal with the kinds of challenges that we deal with right now. And Donald Trump became the man for the moment, because what has happened is that, unfortunately, because of the polarization, politics has devolved into a knife fight more than it has ever been before. And Donald Trump brought a nuclear weapon to a knife fight. And and that is what needed to happen. And so when I think about that you know, the off-color joke the other night, it reminded me that, and this is kind of, you know, bringing this into the gender war here for a moment, Chris. I hope I won't offend half of your audience here, but we men have sort of been intruded upon in our male spaces, whether it's private golf clubs, whether it's private, you know, you can't make, you know, remember the locker room talk and the thing that the joke that Trump made in private, grab her by the, you know, all that stuff. Like, we were all supposed to be scandalized, and we have been tyrannized by the cult of woke and their desire to silence our free speech so that they can do to us what they are doing to the people in the UK. And so I actually, now I like the joke that he made, because it reminded me that we now live in a world where you can say those things like that right now, and we won't be canceled. We won't be tyrannized. We won't be destroyed. And is it ugly to say things like grab her by the what, you know, whatever? But Chris, this is a country where we have so suppressed a healthy masculine instinct that right now, that what we couldn't say in the locker room because we've been invaded is now being said out in the open in public, because it needs to be said out in the open in the public. So probably, here's what I say, Chris, I think we actually aren't being mean enough. And I think people like Cornyn and these other people, they're too nice. And the problem with conservatives, and the reason why conservatives were sort of shunted aside by the MAGA nationalist movement, is because we needed to be a little bit mean. We've been a little too nice. We lost nicely with Mitt Romney and John McCain, and we lost slowly, but now we need to be mean.
Yeah, if I can push back.
Go ahead.
That was republicanism. That's republicanism. Remember, the definition of a Republican today, folks, as told by Mitch McConnell, as told by John Thune, is to find the nearest Democrat butt cheek on which to firmly plant your lips. That is not the conservative movement, number one. Number two, what you brought up about the UFC fighter, we talked about this yesterday. We are living right now where Major League Baseball says of pitchers writing a biblical passage on their hat, they come down on that as they celebrate a divisive night called Pride Night. Oh, so the left wing gets all upset when you write a Bible passage which is unifying, which is glorifying the Creator of mankind. They get all upset, and they have every right, and you can see that story written everywhere. But these same people who say that those pitchers ought to be thrown out of baseball and not allowed to express themselves are the same ones complaining about a UFC fighter making a joke about Big Mike. Look, I understand the hypocrisy, but it doesn't mean I got to buy into it, and I push back on it. And as far as your points on Trump, I've interviewed Trump. I sat down in Trump Tower. My whole book, The Rise of the Liberty-Loving Latino, A New American Revolution, it's centered around that interview. And I had a similar revelation, not on the interview, because my revelation came long before I interviewed him. But what you experienced when you saw him govern, this is the man. He is always thinking a mile a minute, and he is always 3 or 4 steps ahead. And I don't know if you saw today what he did. He is finally playing a card, recognizing that Senate Republicans have been knifing the America First agenda, 84% of the country, and 77 million voters in the back for over a year now. And he is laying down a marker, letting them know, hey, you don't give us the Save America Act, you don't get the ability to spy on Americans and abuse Americans the way you have with FISA. What do you think of FISA as a libertarian?
Not a fan, obviously. I think that we do need to protect Fourth Amendment protections in the United States. The government needs to find a way to get a warrant. I'm very much on the Rand Paul side of things. We have to fight terrorism, and we've been fighting terrorism for all 250 years of this great country's legacy. But I think we can do so by going to a judge. I know they say they go to a judge, but they go to a secret judge. They use these secret courts. And things like that, I think we ought to be very leery of, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat in the White House. So I very much am on the Rand Paul side of things. But we need to, I think Here's the thing. A lot of the problems that this country are faced with, we would solve with limited government problems. Let's look at, for example, U.S. aid. So Donald Trump obliterates U.S. aid. All of a sudden, mysteriously, Chris, all these South American, all these Latin American countries that had communist dictatorships all of a sudden start to fall. You can't tell me that it's just the fact that we black bag Nicolas Maduro and all of a sudden that the electorate are down there, are emboldened to support right-wing or more conservative candidates. There is a very clear cause and effect of American policy and the institutions of government that we have set up and left-wing outcomes. Now, the Save America Act that you brought up, perfect example. If we were able to pass those kinds of reforms, you're going to see like majorities. Spencer Pratt would have likely won at least second place in Los Angeles if we had proper voter security in this country. But the problem is is that, like you said, republicanism, like we had a situation where Republicans in the state of Illinois were unwilling to do what was necessary. They were unwilling to be mean, Chris, and to represent their voters accurately so as to give Republicans a majority. Because here's the thing, and I think a lot of libertarians from my people, they don't understand this. When it comes to the question of gerrymandering, there's no conservative in my mind or libertarian principle involved with the question of gerrymandering. Representation is a pure brawl. Like I say, it's a pure knife fight. And we have too many people on our side that want to give concessions to the left. And I think what Donald Trump has proven is that you don't have to make concessions to the left entirely, at least not entirely, is that there is a path to total victory. As a matter of fact, I think I disagreed with J.D. Vance and his comments that he had made about a week ago about like the closing of the war of Iran, when he was talking about negotiation, because he had said, well, all wars end with a negotiation, and many of the war, including World War II, but that's incorrect. The Civil War, World War II, those wars ended with unconditional surrender. Unconditional surrender. And too many people on our side are fighting wars like it's World War I, and they want to do a Treaty of Versailles, and they want to work with the United Nations and the League of Nations, and they want to give something to the other side. We need warlords. We need barbarians. We are Chris, I won't say this about conservatives because they are a little bit stronger, but my libertarians, we are a priestly class. You will find us often with our books and our alchemical alchemical contortions of policy and discussions and debates over fine dining in classy hotels and restaurants at our conferences, which are dwindling smaller and smaller every year. I go to these conferences. I can tell you very few people are showing up to these things, but they have blinders on, and there isn't none of them do jujitsu. None of them do. I'm a martial arts instructor, so this is going to color my opinion of these things, but they don't understand the art of fighting. They don't. They've read every book by Ludwig von Mises, but they haven't read a single book by Sun Tzu. They haven't read a book of the Book of Five Rings by Miyamoto Musashi. They don't understand the nature of the fight that they're involved in. Now, I wasn't in the military. I didn't serve. I have tremendous respect for those people. But at a minimum,
Me too.
at a minimum, if you're not going to serve in the military, you'd better at least go somewhere you've been punched in the face. I'll tell you this story, Chris, and then I'll let you run with this. But I was at a libertarian event last month in New Hampshire, and I asked everybody by show of hands, raise your hand if you have never been punched in the face. And all too many of these people, Chris, who have very strong opinions about foreign policy and about the nature of violence and the nature of politics. They have strong political opinions, and yet they have never suffered the ignominy of being punched in the face. And there is no better lesson. You cannot learn from a book. The Art of War will not teach you the lesson that you learn when a 6'2" guy with a glove on his hand punches you square in the jaw, and then you realize, oh, I better keep my hands up. And that really is the lesson of Donald Trump. That is the lesson of the MAGA movement. That is the lesson that we need, was that we need fewer priests and more warriors. Chris, what say you?
Amen. Amen. Well, look, folks, I will tell you there's a new political divide in this country. It's not Republican versus Democrat. Dissuade yourself of this right now. It is America first versus America last, and there are members of both political parties on either side of that. That's the new political divide. I've been preaching it to anybody who will listen. And there is no excuse for John Thune or for the sellout Republicans like Tom Tillis or in my own home state. You know, I have fake Republicans who run the Texas House in my home state. There's no excuse for them to be giving away power, to be giving away, sacrificing their own voters to placate socialist Democrats. And here's why, to your point. We are enduring a time now where Charlie Kirk is dead. We're enduring a time right now where the president of the United States has been shot at multiple times and assassination attempts. The left is playing for keeps. This is what the historic left wing does. They're violent, subhuman, inhuman individuals who don't care what type of carnage they have to leave in their wake to achieve political power and dominance over your life. They don't care. You saw it with the Black Lives Movement. You saw it with the Antifa movement. You are seeing the left wing is making a heavy, violent play at control. And there is no excuse for the Republican Party to be as timid and weak as it is, other than the fact that they're selling out. And they have a conscious effort that we know they are selling out. And this is something that a conservative does not believe in. This is something that I would venture to guess, judging by what you're saying, a libertarian does not believe in. That we have to, I'm judging every Republican who is asking for my vote on one criteria, Austin, one criteria only. How well have you defended me and mine from communists and socialists in this country? And if the answer is not at all, you don't get my voter support, period.
Yeah. Yeah. Chris, I've got a question for you, and this is something that keeps me up at night. I kid you not. I'm not much for one and for fear. You know, I'm the type of guy that is always trying to find a silver lining in every cloud. And I can't believe I'm saying this, and all my libertarian friends are now calling me like a Trumper, MAGA cuck sellout, but I don't care. Call me a MAGA cuck. That's what I am, fine. But here's what I am worried about. There's nobody in the world like Donald Trump. Nobody with his courage, nobody with his savvy, nobody who can play 4D chess. What are we going to do when Trump is gone, Chris? Who is going to step up? And I know people they like J.D. Vance. I like Marco Rubio too. There's nobody like Donald Trump. What are we going to do when he's gone? Who is going to fill that gap? Those are big shoes to fill, Chris. And frankly, I don't see anybody filling those shoes.
Oh, well, look, first off, I got 2 minutes before I got to say goodbye. And so I will say this. Throughout American history, and this is what gives me hope, there has always been somebody who has stepped up and risen. And by the way, don't you love Rubio 2.0? I mean, once he got out of the hen den, out of the United States Senate, whoa, look at Marco Rubio go. I mean, he's the conservative we knew he was, the Cubano who understands and recognizes the dangers of communism. So, I mean, it could be Rubio. It could be somebody else we don't even know yet. But when we needed Ronald Reagan, he stepped up and we got Ronald Reagan. The Soviet Union fell. When we need somebody to step in, when we needed Trump, he rose up, came down that escalator and said, you know what, you don't have to accept massive criminal illegal immigration into your country. Change the entire political spectrum of this country and frankly, the world. There will be somebody who rises. And I just hope that our people are savvy enough, and I'll let you have the last word on this, savvy enough to recognize who that is and support them. So go ahead, man, bring us home.
Happy birthday to America, the 250th anniversary of the greatest country that's ever lived. Are we perfect? No. Are we the best country in the world? Hell yes, we are. If your audience really liked what they hear from me, I hope that they will find me over on X. You can follow me on any social platform at AP4Liberty. That's the number 4, AP4Liberty. I hope they'll come and check me out. And Chris, I also want to give you the opportunity to let my audience know where they can find you so that they can follow more of your work as well. And I hope we can do this again, Chris. This was a lot of fun.
This was, and hopefully we can get the video stuff worked out. Chris Salcedo, ChrisSalcedo.com. It's got all my stuff. It's a one-stop shop. Go there. You can find all of our social media, the book, all that kind of stuff. Man, it's great meeting you. And as I suspected, we have a lot more in common than we have differences.
Completely agree. Chris, have a wonderful day. Bless you. Bless America and your audience. We appreciate you.
Thank you, pal. Appreciate it. Austin Peterson, folks. And there he goes.
That was, well, it wasn't quite the disaster that I thought it might be, but it was semi-disastrous. Did you guys see me like futzing with the screen to try and, I was like downloading a picture of him, getting his name in there, covering up my face with that whole messed up situation there, but we made it work. We made it work. And you've unlocked second phase of the bonus content, and you didn't even get to see the other one. So we're going into overtime, guys. All phases of bonus content have been unlocked. Let's get it going. We're going to play a little game. It's time for you to log in. Head over to crowdparty.app. That's crowdparty.app. Join the game. You win prizes from the shop. Head on over to crowdparty.app. Crowdparty. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. I appreciate all your kindness. We did it. Yeah. Thanks, Drew. I saw your Rumble rant, bud. I appreciate you very much. Guys, let's go. Head on over to crowdparty.app. It's time to play the game. We're going to do a little trivia here. Race hoax history in the USA. Party mix. I don't think the AI expected, because I use AI to make these games. I don't think it expected these kinds of trivia games when they created this one. So AP always gets it working. And you know I do, Terry Mills. You know I do. Who wants to play a little game? We're playing for keeps. Head on over to crowdparty.app. That's crowdparty.app, guys. Let's play a game. Type in the code that you see on your screen, 70149. I don't have a whole lot of time. We got to hurry this going. We got to hurry this up. Crowdparty.app. Type in the code, 70149. That's 70149 at crowdparty.app. When you type in that code, guys, when you type in that code, you're going to get into the game. We've got up to 50 players who can join the game. What is this game? It's a trivia game that you can play, and the first place winner is going to take a nice little prize home today. So, guys, head on over. Crowd Party, CROWDPARTY. Party in the USA. Crowdparty.app. That's crowdparty.app. Type in the code 70149. That's 70149. I'm going to start the 30-second countdown. You'll have 30 seconds to get in the game. Oh, Mo Farmer's here with us today. Yes. You now have 30 seconds to join the game. Go to crowdparty.app. Type in the code 70149. Ooh, there's T-Mill. 9 out of 50 players. Here we go. Begin the game. Let's play. In 1987, who was at the center of the Tawana Brawley case? Remember, AI makes these games, guys, so it might be kind of... This is an easy one. Ding, ding. Oh, yeah. Dum, 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 dum. What city was the Charles Stewart case centered in? Oh, yeah. Boston. Who got that one right? Do, 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 do. Susan Smith, what state was she in when she reported a carjacking by a black man? Killary number 1. We've got 12 rounds to see who the winner is. Oh, this is always fun. A little rock, paper, scissors action. Oh, somebody bought the Javier Milei Capitalist Commando desk mat. That's the one I got here on my desk. I don't know if you can see it. It's kind of covered by the... There we go. Yeah, you can kind of see my... my Javier Milei desk mat there. That's the one that looks like Byron ordered it. Cool, Byron. Wonder how you found that. Oh. In what year did Juicy Smollett report the alleged hate crime? Oh, we said that one on the show today. If you were paying attention. Oh, you got a mat? Oh, Mighty Megatron, you got one? Oh, you both got one. Sick. Yeah, I love this mat. How did you guys find that mat, by the way? Did you see it on the show and then order it, or? I'm curious. What was the discovery process? Megatron bought it. That's cool, Mega. Thank you, dude. What city was Tawana Brawley found near after being missing? Oh, Byron, you looked at the catalog and found it? Well, thanks for advertising. You helped Megatron find it, too. Hillary at number 1. What type of work was Juicy Smollett known for? Yeah, thank you, Byron. I appreciate that, bud. That helped. Look, you got another sale. Appreciate that very much, Byron. Thank you. Ooh, traffic lights. It's fucking deep. Get out of here, Megatron, with that. Oh, Hillary still hanging out at number 1. The last round, though, is the double bonus round, so there's a good chance that somebody could blast past you. Which man falsely named a black assailant in the 1989 Boston case? Boy, I wouldn't know that one. I'd just be guessing. Okay, last round. Double points, guys. Here we go. What federal agency defines hate crime statistics in the U.S.? DEA, ATF, FBI, or CIA? You guys in the chat. And we still got the bonus content, the mini documentary to play because we didn't get to finish it last time. Oh, the FBI. Okay, let's see who won. Ooh, Hillary! Congratulations, Hillary. Collect your $20 gift card to the shop, Hillary. How do you collect your gift card? Send us a text at 573-319-1586. Tell us your name, your real name, and your stage name there, Hillary, and we will give you your $20 gift card. So send us a text, 573-319-1586. Hillary will verify that it's you, and we'll send you a $20 gift card to the Grift Shop. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Guys, you're phenomenally generous. Thank you so much for everything you do for us. And we're just going to continue to be awesome and upgrading all of our cool stuff all the time for you guys because you're paying for it. So let's put some money back into the show. Enjoy the bonus content. You unlocked it. We'll see you guys right back again here tomorrow on the Wake Up America show, and that's on the 4 Liberty Network.
Bustling port of Boston on July 25th, 1750, a boy was born who would one day move mountains, or at least move cannons across them. His name was Henry Knox. Knox grew up in modest circumstances after his father died at sea. With little formal education, he became a bookseller in Boston, running a shop called the London Bookstore. He was a large, cheerful man who loved reading military history and engineering books. When the Revolution began, Knox was already deeply interested in artillery and military science. After the fighting at Lexington and Concord in April 1775, the American forces laid siege to Boston, but they lacked heavy artillery. Without cannons, they had little hope of driving the powerful British Army out of the city. Knox approached George Washington with a bold idea: capture the cannons from the abandoned British fort at Fort Ticonderoga in northern New York and bring them to Boston. Washington approved the plan and gave Knox command of the mission. In November 1775, the 25-year-old bookseller set out with a small group of men on what would become one of the most remarkable logistical feats of the entire war. The journey was brutal from the start. Knox and his men reached Fort Ticonderoga in early December and selected 59 pieces of artillery, including heavy cannons, mortars, and howitzers. Getting them out of the fort and onto sleds was difficult enough, but moving them over 300 miles through the dead of winter was nearly impossible. They traveled across frozen rivers and through deep snow. On more than one occasion, the ice began to crack beneath the massive weight of the guns. At one point, while crossing the Hudson River, several cannons broke through the ice and sank. Knox and his men worked for hours in freezing water to recover them. Another time, a cannon sled overturned on a steep mountain trail, nearly crushing several men. Despite the constant danger and exhaustion, Knox refused to give up. He pushed his men forward day after day through snowstorms and bitter cold. They used oxen to pull the heavy sleds when possible, and dragged the guns by hand when the animals could go no farther. The journey that should have taken weeks stretched into nearly 2 months of suffering and near disasters. Finally, on January 24, 1776, Henry Knox arrived in Framingham, Massachusetts, with the artillery intact. Washington was overjoyed. The cannons were quickly moved into position on Dorchester Heights overlooking Boston. On the night of March 4, 1776, under cover of darkness and a heavy bombardment, American forces fortified the heights with Knox's guns. When dawn broke on March 5th, the British looked up in shock. Dozens of heavy cannons now pointed directly at their ships and positions in Boston. The British commander, General William Howe, realized his situation was hopeless. Rather than risk a bloody battle, he chose to evacuate the city. On March 17, 1776, the British Army and thousands of loyalists boarded ships and sailed away from Boston. It was the first major strategic victory of the American Revolution, and it had been made possible by Henry Knox and his noble train of artillery. Knox continued to serve as Washington's chief of artillery throughout the war. He fought at Trenton, Princeton, Brandywine, Germantown, and Monmouth. His greatest contribution came at the Siege of Yorktown in 1781, where his artillery played a critical role in battering the British defenses until Cornwallis was forced to surrender. After the war, Knox became the first Secretary of War under the new United States government. He helped establish the foundation of the American military and remained a trusted advisor to George Washington until his retirement. Henry Knox died on October 25, 1806, at the age of 56. Though he was never a flashy battlefield commander, his determination and engineering skill helped turn the tide of the Revolution at a critical moment. The overweight Boston bookseller had accomplished what many thought was impossible, moving an entire arsenal across frozen wilderness in the middle of winter. And in doing so, he helped give birth to American independence.
Hark! I've discovered a brew so bold, 'twill ignite the spirit of liberty. This is not merely coffee, 'tis the very essence of American boldness. Give me coffee, or give me death. Go to 4 Liberty Shop to procure yours now.